You know, I get asked a lot by reporters whether, you know, if you've got to boil your campaign down to a few simple words, what's it about? I can tell you. I always think of them as three legs on a stool. The first thing we have to do is get away from this immoral level of debt that we are putting on every American and every newborn American. If you don't know your rate today, what you owe today is $48,000. And it went up about $12 today. And it'll go up $12 tomorrow and $12 the next day. You know, most people do not realize every day the federal government spends $4 billion. And I'd like to stop there and say the federal government spends $4 billion, but that's not where the sentence ends. Every day the United States government spends $4 billion more than it takes in. $4 billion a day. It wasn't long ago that there was that debate about, you know, is the $38 billion, is the $61 billion in cuts, is that really, is it going to do enough? And my answer was, you know, maybe I'm a simple-minded guy, certainly some people in D.C. would say I am, but I think of it as days. Oh, so if we have a $61 billion cut, what that means is, for 350 days, we're going to keep going on business as usual, but for 15 days each year, we're going to balance our budget. Does that make sense? I don't think so. It is going to take very much diligence and hard choices if we are to turn our nation around. It really is. Point number one, again, we have to lower this immoral level of debt that we are carrying. Point number two, we have to change the tax structure in the United States of America from being one where we tax the creation of wealth to taxing consumption. If you look at the thriving economies that are occurring today around the world, that's what they're doing. Why do you want to punish people who are going to go out and create the jobs, cause the employment, cause prosperity, and yet that's historically what our tax code has done? And of course, the Democrats right now are saying, well, we just need to give more taxes, put more taxes on the wealthy. If you took every penny of those people who make more than $100,000 a year, didn't tax it, just took every penny of it, you still wouldn't even be making a drop in the bucket to face the real issues that are before us. Leg number three of the stool, if we're going to restore America, I believe we have to dramatically reduce the federal government's regulation on American businesses. You know, it's an interesting coincidence, and it is a coincidence, and that's all. This year, the federal government spent $1.6 trillion regulating American business. Now, it's a coincidence that this year our federal deficit, just this year, happens to be $1.6 trillion. One isn't necessarily related to the other. As I say, it's kind of a coincidence, but it puts the magnitude out there before you. Here's another way of thinking of it. How about this? We spent $1.6 trillion protecting Americans from American business. That's what regulations do. We spent about half of that to fund the United States Department of Defense. We spent twice as much defending American citizens from this perceived evil of American business, spent twice as much as we do defending ourselves against the rest of the military forces of the world. Tell me things aren't out of whack. On February 22nd, I announced I was going to run for the United States Senate. I will tell you that it is not something I have long aspired to do. It was a year ago this month that members of the Republican State Committee, and if you're not into the party structure, you probably think the state chairman runs the state Republican Party. Not true. The state chairman is hired by the state Republican Committee. That's the highest rank of Republicanism, okay? Members of that committee, a year ago this month, asked me to run against Senator Lugar. And I will be very candid with you. When they asked me to do that, my typical response was to say, well, gee, that's very thoughtful of you, very kind, very flattering. Well, what the heck did I ever do to you? You know, that sounded like I was being thrown under a bus. And I kind of set it aside. I was in my own re-election mode last year, running for state treasurer. On election day, something truly astounding happened, and I'm told I may be the first state treasurer in the history of Indiana to lead the ballot on election day. which is to say I got more votes than any other person in Indiana last year. I ran more than 100,000 votes, even ahead of Senator Coates, who won pretty convincingly. I got just under 63% of the vote. When that happened, those same people who had contacted me in June started saying, Richard, you got to do this, you got to do this. And still, I was very hesitant to do it. Again, it's not been a lifelong ambition. As you heard from the resume, I think, I didn't hear the whole resume, but you know, my career has not been in politics. Being state treasurer, this is the first full-time job in government I've ever held. I'm a geologist. I love science. I'm a science geek. Don't ask me how a geologist ends up being state treasurer. I can't explain it. Although it is true, a while back I was explaining to someone that I'm certain I'm the only state treasurer in the history of the United States of America whose graduate dissertation was in the field of invertebrate paleontology. As soon as I said that, someone came up to me and said, well, Richard, you were destined to succeed in politics. You're used to working in a world with spineless creatures. Love that. That is good, isn't it? Wish I'd thought of it. But all that being said, my business interest, my science background, I've worked in the energy business for 31 years. It wasn't my desire to do this, but the more I was asked, the more I began to look at it, the more I began to think of the future. And yes, the past, because I do study history so diligently. The more I came to realize I was the right person to do this. We announced on February 22nd, and I expected within the Republican Party to pretty well be seen as radioactive. I thought people would walk away from me and just not want to deal with me because Senator Lugar is obviously a Republican icon. And let me make no mistake about this. I have great respect for Senator Lugar. Anyone who serves nearly a half a century in public service deserves the respect of everyone else. It is not easy to be on this side of the microphone day after day. You take your criticism, some of it fair, you take criticism, some of it that isn't. But he's been very diligent. But I do have disagreements with Mr. Lugar, and that's what this campaign is going to be about. You know, I am convinced that if we keep sending the same people back to D.C., honorable as many of them might be, we are not going to get the kind of solutions we really need. You know, I'm not going to go through a whole litany of issues that I disagree with the senator on, but I will tell you, fundamentally it comes down to this. I have come to the conclusion in my own mind, it is a beautiful thing to be able to run for public office at the age of 60, knowing A, I don't need the job, and B, knowing if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to serve, I get the intense privilege of making really hard decisions for the next 6 years. You know, this is not, as I say, a career move. This is a job that I see as one of sacrifice. There are many reasons why I'd rather be doing 100 other things than doing this. But I'm convinced it's time. It is time for Indiana to have new leadership in the United States Senate. And it's time for people like myself, who maybe aren't career politicians, but who've worked to make a payroll, who've succeeded in business, who really don't need the job, but are just willing to take it on because it needs to be done, because it does.